Ladies and gentlemen, live from London, it's 3DS Meetup TV.
Are we live?
There we go. We are live.
Yay! Hello everyone and welcome to another 3DS London virtual edition. I'm really happy to be here tonight with everyone else on your screen. Tonight is kind of a special night because we have Autodesk and as our main guests. So and then they being our main sponsors, they deserve all the glamour and so of tonight. I just wanted to quickly introduce myself. I'm Joanna and I'm a 3D artist at Ink. And I'm also your host tonight along with Nigel. And yeah, I hope you all enjoy tonight. It's going to be a great evening and full of like really nice discussions and nice, amazing presentations. So stay tuned till the end. And yeah, I just want to say a big thank you to everyone who is joining us tonight and all the speakers and panelists. Thanks everyone, it means a lot to us. And I would like everyone to introduce themselves because I feel like this is like a better way to kick off the evening. So maybe let's start with our speakers. Thomas, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everybody. It's great to be here. And I know it's an evening meeting for a lot of you. It's actually about 11 a.m. where I'm at in the Bay Area. My name is Thomas Marrone. I'm the lead ship artist for the massively multiplayer Star Trek Online. It's developed by Cryptic Studios, published by Perfect World, and we use 3D Studio Max to build our starships in the game. So we'll be talking a little bit about that.
Wow, I'm already hooked. Thank you very much.
Okay, I guess now it's me. Hi everyone, my name is Ciro Cardoso. I am one of the 3D artists at Hayes Davidson, and I'm also responsible to help in the innovation, research and development. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about some of my personal projects and how I use OSL shaders and how they can make your life so much easier and to be more efficient and productive.
Thank you. So we are also joined by Zap and Bruno, who are part of the Autodesk team. Do you want to say a word and introduce yourself as well?
Well, hi, I'm Zap, the crazy Swedish guy. I'm the tech lead of the 3ds Max rendering team, and everything good with rendering I did and everything bad somebody else did. That's the general rule. Bruno is my boss, so I also blame him mostly. So that's the short story. Bruno, take it from here.
It's kind of true.
It is.
So hi, my name is Bruno. I'm based from Montreal. So I'm what we call a product owner on the 3ds Max team. I'm responsible for the rendering team. So I have the joy to work with Zap every day. I'm kind of lucky. Other than that, I was a Max user for 20 years before I joined the Autodesk group, I worked on real-time stuff, so Stingray, Rivet Live, 3ds Max Interactive, and now I'm the product owner for rendering in Max. That's it.
Amazing, thank you both. And then a quick introduction from our committee as well. We have Nigel, Tom, Simon, and Olga tonight.
Hi everyone.
Yeah,
I'm Nigel, as Joanna said. I'm on the committee. I co-own Sinai. I have a magazine. I have a production company, and I do stuff. That's me.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Tom Spall, ArcViz artist, run my own little company, and just happy to be part of the panel as always. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Hi, I'm Simon, long-time 3ds Londoner, and I work at Hawkins Brown Architects in London.
Hey, I'm Olga. I work at Hayes Davidson as an artist and senior of culture development.
yay, thank you everyone, that was great. So tonight is about Autodesk and how we use 3ds Max in our everyday creative experiences, or in all the production and all the cool stuff we see all the time. And just wanted to say again thank you to everyone who was helping us organize this event, and again to everyone who is presenting tonight. And let's kick off with some news from the industry. I know Olga has something to share with us, so maybe we should start with that.
Yes, that would be great. Thank you, Joanna. There is a charity run coming up called HD 5K Virtual 2021, and this year only, because it's a special edition. We are inviting absolutely everyone in the whole wide world to join and to run with us on 22nd of May. It's a Saturday. There's a 24-hour period when you can actually do the 5K and log it with an app to be able to participate in some amazing prizes as well, if you are the fastest, perhaps. If you'd like to sign up, I don't know if we're going to have the board on. Yeah, coming up. So you can see the website. You can use the QR code to be able to go on the website and sign up. It would be really lovely if you would like to join our running community, and we can do something together, even though we're all apart in all different areas of the world, and run a 5K as well. Get fit for the summer when we can be all out. Just to kind of explain a bit further, you can look up it on the website as well, but it's in aid of Motor Neuron Disease Association. It's a charity helping people suffering from MND, and the connection is that our founder at Hayes Davidson, Alan, he actually passed away from that disease. So that's why it's really close to our hearts, and it would be amazing if you would like to be a part of it as well. Thank you very much.
Olga, I have a question. Can you be anywhere in the world to join and participate?
Yes, exactly. So because it's a 24-hour time period to actually do the run, so you can be absolutely wherever and do it like in your own time, in your own place, wherever it fits you best, basically.
That doesn't mean I have 24 hours to do a 5K run, right?
Well, you could. I don't see why not.
That's more my pace, I think.
I mean, technically it's possible. Maybe we need to look at doing a prize for the slower run.
Well, I think that there's more of a challenge in doing it over 24 hours. It's like there's a mathematical challenge there of actually working out how slow you have to actually travel.
Yeah, maybe that's something
maybe
you can
Zap
try
could tell us that.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, you can walk it, you can run it, like whatever you want. You can join or donate if you just want to be supportive. So it's up to you. As long as you would like to join us, there is an event on LinkedIn. You can follow us also on Hayes Davidson on Twitter and Instagram. We'll be posting information there, and I'll share some links afterwards on chat and online as well. So you'll be able to look it up, hopefully.
Cool.
Yes.
Thanks. Olga, you mentioned, sorry, butting in. Olga, you mentioned LinkedIn there. Have we got some LinkedIn news for 3DS London? I think we have.
Yes, we do. I think, Joanna.
We have. We actually have a LinkedIn page now, which is open to everyone. And give us a follow, please, because we share all the events, information, and cool stuff in there. So yeah, keep an eye on that. Yeah.
Is it the old one? Is it the old one, or is it a different one?
No, so the old one is actually a group which is you need to be a member. So that means you need to, just like Facebook, it's closed, so it's not public. Everything we post is just for the people who are part of the group. But now what we have as an update is another LinkedIn page, almost like a company page, where you can see all the updates, and you don't have to. The only thing you have to do is follow us. You don't have to be a part of it or be part of any discussions or anything, and you can freely share everything we share in there. So yeah, it's open to everyone, so please give us a like and a follow. We'll keep you updated with everything that's coming up for the next year or so.
I just posted it on the chat if anyone wants to copy that and give us a follow now we can then say hi to you on there as well.
Thanks, Olga.
Cool.
Thank you. I saw the event. I actually saw the run thing, and I'm taking part of it. So I'm really looking forward to that. Thanks for sharing with us.
When you do, Joanna, make sure you use your headphones when you use the app to log it, because there is some exciting audio that we recorded especially for the occasion.
Ah, you see. Okay. Thank you. I know Nigel also have some something to share with us.
Blink. There we go.
Yes. Thank you. Thanks, Nigel. And maybe it's time to mention as well the rookies, which we spoke about a little bit.
Yeah. So, if you don't know about the rookies, it's the world's biggest student competition. It's only open for students. We've talked about it quite a bit, but I just wanted to mention that it closes, or submissions close at the end of this month. So you hurry up if you are a student and you want to enter that. Autodesk is one of the main sponsors. There's tons of other people. It's huge, but yeah, you're missing out if you don't enter. So we look forward to seeing your entries.
Yes.
That's all.
Thank you. Thanks again. I know last year, I think, we had 2 of the winners on the show.
We did.
So we could do that again. So if you participate and win, then you can join us on the show as well, which is cool. We can hear your story.
I think probably everyone on the panel would agree who has seen the work from these students. It's every year it just gets better and better, and the quality of first of all what they are being taught at different schools and academies around the world, and the talent that the work they're producing. I think that the animation winners last year got picked up by Pixar immediately. I mean, in fact, they hadn't even qualified, and Pixar just grabbed them. It's just phenomenal work. So it's, as a judge, it is incredibly difficult to pick who's a professional and who's a student these days. But let's move on.
Yeah, sounds great. Thanks for the news, and thank you everyone for filling up this part of the presentation. So let's move on to a bit of chat actually part where we sit and just talk about the industry. So how is everyone? Where is everyone based? How is everyone doing? Or do you still work from home and all that? Anyone want to? Let's start with Zap.
I can start. I'm based in London. I love working remotely. It's great. Yes. No, I know that it's great to go to the studio and to be with people, and I recognize that. So it would be nice if you have like a hybrid system. But I love doing that because, for example, this week I'm attending FMX 2021.
Oh yeah.
Which it's like from 8 in the morning until 11 in the evening. Being home allows you to watch that, so there's a lot of stuff to see.
Yeah, totally agree.
Did you? Was Elio talking today? Was he presenting? Was it today his presentation?
I think Eloy Logan. Yeah, they were doing a piece today. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's now.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, I think it's now. It's like, I'll catch it later.
As I mentioned before, I'm in the Bay Area, San Jose, California, and my company, Cryptic Studios, is actually embracing remote work. And even after the pandemic is settled, we're going to let everybody in the company work from home if they want. And that also really broadens our hiring base out to North America. So we'll be, we're opening up jobs to everybody in the country, which is good for us because it's gonna be hard to compete with all the other Bay Area tech companies. When you've got, Google and Netflix. Netflix is literally in the same city as us, so engineers are hard to come by where we are. So the pandemic has really shifted our our perspective on how to handle remote work and remote culture, which has been really good.
How big is the studio or the company?
Yeah, it's about 200 people.
Okay.
We've got four live games right now. We just launched beta for Magic Legends, which is a action RPG based on Magic the Gathering, and then I work on Star Trek Online, which has been around for 11 years. But it's the new Star Trek shows have been really good for us, so STO is still going strong too, even after 11 years.
Cool. And then 3D Studio Max is your bedrock 3D program, or?
Yeah, we've got we have a lot of people on a lot of different Autodesk stuff. So a lot of people on Magic use Maya, but we use 3D Studio Max primarily on Neverwinter, which is one of our other games, and STO.
And have you, from an education point of view, are there students in the Bay Area? Are there a lot of students who are training on Macs, or is it something that you have to do in-house to bring them up to speed?
That's a good thing. I mean, I think we just hired somebody who's right out of I think she's right out of school, and I think she's working in Max. But I mean, the thing about being an older game is we usually find people who are maybe a little more further along in their career, a little more settled, depending on what we're looking for. So I think it's been a mix of people coming out of school with Maya and Max experience.
But these days, it's a quite interchangeable between Max and Maya.
Yeah.
I know that if there are any Maya viewers, they'd probably go, no, it's not. But I think Autodesk is doing a good job to actually to make the tools feel and that you can actually, if you work with both, you get quite used to it.
And there's a lot of mixed pipeline. I mean, usually they will hire the talent, and if they're using Max or Maya, I mean, it's fine. The moment they can get the job done,
Right.
That's why we see a lot of mixed kind of pipeline with both product, or even more product than just Max and Maya.
You and I, we didn't mention about the questionnaire and the document.
I was just thinking that.
Do you want to sort of quickly talk about that?
Yeah, so we decided to have a Google form for anyone in the audience who wants to ask questions, the Autodesk team or anyone in the panel tonight. It's kind of easier for us and for everyone to keep track on the questions, so we'll make sure that everything is addressed. Whereas on YouTube, of course, you can still ask your questions or leave your comments there, but it's a bit harder for us to follow. So you can find the link on our LinkedIn page. Maybe I'll post it on YouTube as well, and also in our group in Facebook. So if you have any questions at any point, just write it down and we'll definitely make sure we'll address that.
I think Olga put a link on YouTube, but YouTube deletes links. It doesn't let you post them. So we'll put the previous link that you talked about, Olga. We'll put that on there as well.
Yeah, but definitely ask away. Bruno,
how do we link to it? How do we link to it now? We can't share the link to where it is. Like, someone needs to write it on a piece of paper.
How about putting it on the LinkedIn page?
Perfect. It is on the LinkedIn page.
Well, there we go. Just everyone go to LinkedIn.
Maybe it's not, but I will do it.
Or if you've got a question for Bruno or Zap, put it in the chat. We'll add it to the form and we'll try and do some. We won't go into a full-on 2 hours with Bruno and firing questions to him. But yeah, be sensible.
Why not?
Okay.
Yeah, why not?
Right. So there are rules to this. Nothing about, or you don't want to answer rules about subscription, or it's all to do with tech tonight, isn't it?
Yeah, please no, nothing like that.
Yeah. So,
but I mean, we're here to answer any questions, so feel free to just ping us, and even after the event, I mean, if you have, feel free to ping me on LinkedIn, and we can chit chat.
Yeah, ping Bruno.
And I'll bug Zap after that if I don't know the answer.
Zap, you noticed that
it trickled down.
But yeah, we'll fill out the form, and so everything that if we don't get round to your questions, we will, or Bruno will get round to it in the coming days. So go for it. Start firing those questions through.
Yeah, the link is on LinkedIn and Facebook group, and it's out there.
And please,
so.
please be kind. We have feelings too.
What?
So I've got a question for the panel tonight. Hands up, or how many of you are making money from NFTs? Is this a topical thing to bring up?
It was a month ago. It's over.
Oh, it's not over. I'm talking to people who are telling me that they're doing quite well from it. But dead conversation. Let's move on to the next one.
It's all Dogecoin today anyway. So.
Let's not talk about anything as uncivilized as money. Let's do art and culture instead.
I heard there was a Zap coin being launched next week.
Zap coin, yeah, totally.
Oh dear. What is the time? 20 past.
Yeah, I think let's kick off with our first presentation because I'm impatient. Yeah.
So,
Tom, are you ready?
Yeah, I think Nigel's going to start up the video in a second. So I do introduce myself in the video, but just to recap, I'm Thomas Marrone. I'm the lead ship artist for Star Trek Online. So we're going to watch a presentation I put together that kind of goes into how we use Max to design and model ships for Star Trek Online. And it's not a super technical presentation. It's more about our general pipeline. But hopefully, you know, if you're a science fiction fan, if you're a gamer, you'll get something out of it.
cool. So shall we kick off?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want me to include, or do you want to talk over this at any stage, or
No, it's all self-contained.
Okay, let's go for it.
Hello, everyone. My name is Thomas Marrone. I'm the lead Starship artist for the massively multiplayer game Star Trek Online, an officially licensed free-to-play game developed by Cryptic Studios and available on PC, Xbox One, and PlayStation 4. I've been on the STO team for over 10 years and working on our starships for about half that time. The game itself has celebrated its 11th anniversary at the beginning of 2021, and, thanks to a renaissance of new Star Trek shows, is still going very strong. Star Trek Online's longevity has certainly been helped by all the new Star Trek content of the last few years, but even more important is the loyalty of its player base and their fascination with STO's mix of ground and space-based gameplay and starship customization. Players joke that the true endgame of Star Trek Online is Space Barbie. STO players love to customize their captains, officers, and even spaceships with a wide variety of options. For starships, these visual options include swapping major parts of the ship, choosing between a large variety of material options, and even personalized name textures. Star Trek Online starships are designed and modeled to accommodate this player-driven customization. The starships are modeled in modular pieces that can be switched between various options, allowing players to choose from a variety of silhouettes and styles. The second major piece of ship customization is the ship's material set. Instead of modeling it using a high-low bake workflow, STO ships are modeled at their final game resolution and then unwrapped to a standard UV template. Every ship and ship material in the game shares this template. This means that any starship in STO could potentially use any of the hundreds of starship materials in the game. This modularity in modeling and texturing offers substantial flexibility well suited for an MMO. Starships become yet another avatar for the player, and by allowing them to broadly customize their ships, it is easy for players to emotionally connect with their personalized starship. The customization choices make the vessel theirs in a profound way, and it plays into STO's central fantasy of embarking on your own Star Trek adventure. STO's high degree of personalization is an artifact of Star Trek Online's age. Launched in February of 2010, STO is a classic MMO with large social instances, discrete player avatar progression, and a large selection of solo and multiplayer content. STO's special sauce resides in its unique naval-style space gameplay combined with character-focused away team missions on planetary environments. Letting players be both their captain and their ship offered several angles for progression and customization that has blessed the game with incredibly strong retention over the years. When planning for this, Star Trek Online's pre-launch art team had to create a system that satisfied requirements for customization, while also making sure that the shipbuilding pipeline remained manageable for ship artists to develop and expand as the game grew and more ships were added. The process developed by the original ship art team has essentially survived the ensuing decade intact. While triangle counts and texture resolution have increased, the basic modular nature of STO's ship modeling and UV pipeline remains. Like a classic suit, our methods have gone out of style and back in style again when compared to hard surface workflows in the industry at large. The pipeline of building a ship for Star Trek Online starts with our concept artist. The team collaborates with them to develop the concept design which will guide the 3D artist when creating the final asset. Once the concept illustrations are done, the ship artist will model the ship, keeping in mind the eventual UV requirements as they go. After modeling and UVing, the artist will do a detail pass on the model to add floating geometry for surface features such as windows, escape pods, and other decals. When the model is complete, the ship artist will begin the extensive data setup that allows the ship to make use of STO's robust customization options. We'll examine these stages individually to consider how Star Trek Online has maintained an asset creation pipeline over the past decade that can still produce high-quality starship models with a relatively quick turnaround time, all while continuing to offer players the opportunity to trim their starship just the way they like. As much as STO's ship art owes its popularity to well-executed models of canon designs, originally from Star Trek films and TV shows, STO's ship releases also offer Star Trek fans brand new designs created bespoke for Star Trek Online. These original designs are usually conceived as a modernization of an existing Star Trek ship, taking the basic silhouette of that ship and updating it to a unique visual style meant to represent the 25th century timeline that STO takes place in. Star Trek Online's setting is 40 years after the Star Trek TV shows of The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager, so its original starship designs have roots in those graceful 24th century starships, but use sleek lines and high contrast hull plating to show how Starfleet technology has evolved in the last few decades. STO's senior concept artist, Hector Ortiz, begins the process of designing a new STO ship by considering any starships in that family of ships. The team deliberates on which features are important to the vessel's lineage and which features can be changed to offer players something new. After dozens of sketches, the team will hone in on a direction that balances two goals: fulfillment of player expectations versus the desire to create something unique and interesting. This is naturally a very subjective process, and oftentimes the team tries to land on designs that align with the IP but also blaze some new ground. Once Ortiz has the general silhouette nailed down, he will begin blocking out the concept in 3ds Max. The team likes to start blocking out ships in 3D early, as it gives us a good feel of how the starship will look from any angle. In STO, players can look at their ship from any direction, so we want to make sure that the design will show well from all sides. This early 3D white box phase allows us to easily examine a variety of shapes and proportions, and copy off new iterations to quickly try suggestions, alternatives, and kit bashes. Playing with rough concepts using basic 3D geometry allows us to be experimental and flexible, and provides fertile ground for fast collaboration, and can occasionally lead to happy accidents through the use of the symmetry modifier, parts instancing, and the like. Once the 3D blockout is approved, Ortiz will take his rough model and use it as a foundation for a final concept piece that explores the details and materials of the ship more thoroughly. This illustration is the final inspiration for the ship and is sent to an internal ship artist or one of our outsourcing artists to build the final asset. Because the concept illustration is based on Ortiz's approved white box model, the ship artist can leverage that model as a starting point for their work, kicking off the project with a solid grasp on the target proportions and shapes for their model in 3D. With the finished concept in hand, the ship artist begins creating the model that will be the final in-game ship. As mentioned before, Star Trek Online ships are built to their final in-game triangle count, with the base geometry weighing in around 40,000 triangles. Because ships are controlled by players, emit powers, and have various customization options, under the hood they are considered costumes by the game engine. Various families of ships share a skeleton of parts, but instead of head, neck, or arms, the bones of this skeleton are saucer, hull, and nacelles, for example. The skeleton represents a hierarchy of parts connected together in ways that are an abstraction of the ship's physical arrangement. The most central part of the ship, where its center of mass might be, is the hull, and from there, stanchions branch out to connect to things like saucers and nacelles or mission pods. On a ship skeleton, we can create a variety of different variants that share the same basic layout and design heritage. Because the various bones of the skeleton are modeled as individual objects, they can be swapped by the players independently to allow them to create their own Star Trek designs. Because we do not need to unwrap our low poly model for a bake, floating geometry and large UV islands are fine for the final in-game asset. By utilizing these modeling shortcuts, we can avoid too many unnecessary cuts into the geo, saving both time and triangles for where they might be needed most. Even though we are not building sub-D models, intentional regular topology is still important to make the most of our tiling material UV sets. Panel shapes on the final texture sheets are generally square or rectangular, so if panel lines need to follow curvature in the hull, that curvature should be modeled in. If there are specific panel lines we need in certain places to match reference or to provide natural breaks between panel types in our UV sheet, we will cut in to the surface of the model and map those strips to trim sections of the UV layout. We can use shapes to create elegant Bezier paths and use the shape merge compound object to create a perfect cut into our surface geo. After cleaning the result, we run a small inset to create our panel trim. The updated chamfer tools in newer versions of Max are essential for rounding small edges to add scale and catch light. Chamfering key corners can also make the difference between a model reading as a game asset and hitting that feel of a physical or constructed object. Just to uncheck that smoothing group button. New in Max 2021, the weighted normals modifier is another essential modeling tool for us when building starships. As we do not bake our meshes, we cannot rely on the normals in our baked textures to add edge details on the model. Thus, small chamfers with weighted normals provide crisp edges perfect for a model that represents a large starship. As mentioned before, all of our starship hull materials are laid out to an existing template. This template has 3 horizontally tiling paneling sections, 2 horizontally tiling trim sections, and a variety of areas for ship-specific details. While these details and panels may look different per ship, their function is generally similar enough that these different materials will translate across ships. This UV template is used for every ship and every ship material in the game, and has been for 11 years. This means that even older ship models can make use of our brand new materials and vice versa. We can also release items that allow players to apply new materials to any of their ships, which have become valued chase items in the game for microtransactions. The STO ship team creates every ship material to the universal UV layout. Artists begin work on materials by modeling a high poly mesh of panels and details. This mesh will then be baked to a flat plane to create ID, AO, normal, and height maps. Once we have these foundational bakes, we bring them into the program's Substance Designer. There we use those bakes to drive the materials and add additional colors, tiling nodes, and other tools to create the final maps we use to make our material. These maps are diffuse, specular, gloss, and lumi. Once the material is complete, the ship artist will begin UVing the model. The artist has already built the model with this stage in mind, so various paneled sections are separated into UV islands and positioned on the appropriate place in the sheet. We might use Quick Peel in the UV editor to quickly flatten and relax large sections of paneling. If required by the model, we will try to regularize the vertices against the panel grid in the material, so that the panel grids flow well with the topology of the model. Since we do not have an overall ambient occlusion bake for the ship model itself, we may make use of the normals and AO baked into the trim portions of our material by cutting in small trims at the intersections of various pieces to fake AO at these positions. To make unwrapping trim easier, we do our best to cut the trim sections as quad strips. We do a quick peel to get a rough scale for this island established, and then run a straighten operation to quickly align the geo to the tiling trim on the texture sheet. After straightening the strip, we need to check the width of each segment on the UV space against the width of that segment on the model in 3D space to make sure the general area of the quads are similar to avoid stretching and tearing. When unwrapping is complete, we can move on to the final detail pass. Star Trek ships have an established collection of details and greebles that generally belie some function in the universe, and STO ships aim to honor this legacy. The most obvious detail on Starfleet ships tend to be the large suite of windows and escape pods that dot the ship, communicating their massive scale. To allow players to select their own style of windows and escape pods as another axis of customization, we create these items as a separate object and use floating geo pushed out slightly from the hull. Aside from windows, we also have sheets of small decals that denote hatches, warning markers, and other details. We use the freeform modeling tool to place these decals. We position them where we want them relative to the ship on the XY, and then use the conform tool to shrink wrap them to the ship's hull. Light is another detail that is very important to bring these starships to life. Unfortunately, when STO launched, we had a very limited number of lights to work with in a scene, so our ships do not have a way to build in actual emissive lights. Instead, we have created a shader that reads vertex colors to mimic the behavior of spilled light. The artist can paint color onto vertices, and that color will be additively applied to the hull material to make the material seem to be lit by nearby engines or spotlights. Once the detail pass is finished, the artist must prepare the geo for intake into the game. To do this, they need to add objects in Max that we call mount points, which are generic objects that provide pivot data to the game engine. These nodes indicate where various effects like weapons fire, damage leaks, scanning beams, and engine trails will appear on the model. As part of this process, the artist also positions the attachment mount points that determine how the component objects of the ship, the saucer, neck, and so on, attach together. The game respects the position, scale, and rotation of these mount points, and the pivot of a component is set to be at the same location as the mount point it is locking into. When building a new variant of ship into an existing family, we must test fit the new parts with existing pieces to make sure that new ship's engines, for example, work with all of the existing struts they attach to. This can be a tedious process, but the end result is a system that allows players impressive freedom to pick and choose the pieces they like to make their own unique Star Trek ship. Of course, when Star Trek Online launched 11 years ago, the horsepower of gaming machines and player expectations for graphical fidelity were very different from where things stand today. Our tools, hardware, and standards have all changed a lot in the last 11 years. To stay relevant for our existing players and new Star Trek fans joining us in the era of Discovery, Picard, Lower Decks, and more, the STO team is consistently and gradually updating the game's visuals to a modern standard. We have gradually increased our triangle count per ship from 8,000 at launch to over 40,000 now. Advancements in video card and console technology has given us a lot more freedom to build the complex and smooth geometry required for accurate recreations of most Star Trek ships. In addition to geometry, we have also drastically improved the fidelity of our materials. Originally made with Photoshop plugins for normal map creation, our materials now are baked from high-poly sheets. We use Substance Designer to create detailed, high-quality textures and can rapidly iterate on these materials to get the best possible results. We have also been building a good relationship with Viacom CBS and other Star Trek licensing partners. In many cases, we can now have access to the actual models used in the VFX shots of the new Star Trek TV shows. Being able to build with this reference in hand has made a huge difference in the quality and accuracy of our new ships. All of that said, Star Trek Online is still over 11 years old. We are doing well with the tools we have, but I thought it would be worth touching on how we might do things differently if we were starting fresh with technology. The most obvious place to start is PBR materials. STO uses a custom spec gloss model to drive our shaders, and we would love to be working with a more industry standard PBR rendering option instead. Another technology that could make a big difference for us is parallax occlusion. Adding this element to our shaders based on height maps could really add scale and complexity to our player ships by adding depth to our windows and making small hull details really come alive. Decal shaders are another opportunity for improvement. Unreal and Unity can both use mesh decals that can be placed flush with the underlying surface, and the game presents them correctly as one unified object without problems of z-fighting. In STO, since we are just manually creating a small vertical gap between the decal and the hull, we occasionally struggle with z-fighting, scaling, and effects issues. Finally, starting up a brand new pipeline would allow us to make use of multiple UV sets per model. We could do one unwrap using the tiling textures method to preserve texel density and allow customization through swappable tiling textures, but also make use of a traditional high-low bake for special details and ambient occlusion. Of course, this would significantly increase the time it takes to make a ship, so the target production timeline for a ship would have to be carefully considered. Ultimately, we are lucky to have had the opportunity to work on a game that has lasted for 11 years and is still going strong. Not to mention, Star Trek is a beloved universe and new fans are boldly going every day. We are grateful for the opportunity to build the ships that players command to explore the final frontier in Star Trek Online. Thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed the chance to shoot the ship about how we continue to build assets that players want to collect, personalize, and share for a long-running MMO.
Back. Hello. There we go.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, that was great. So interesting. Does anyone have questions for Tom? Straight away.
From us, Olga, you said we had some questions?
Thank you everyone that posted the question through our forums. One of them is, okay, I'm just going to read it out. Hi, in the 3ds Max roadmap, there is a lot of upcoming great features like mocap and retargeting, populate customization, and real-time blending. Do you have any estimated time/date these will be available?
Wow. So if I answered this, I could get fired. So that's usually the thing your manager told you, like you can never say release date or release number. So unfortunately, I cannot tell. My only advice will be please come and join the 3ds Max beta, because you'll be able to actually try and discuss about some of these features currently development, but I'm not allowed, well, like, neither Zap, neither I, to say release date. So I'm sorry, I cannot really answer this one. But again, my advice, if you want to actually play with those things, give some feedback on those features as they are being developed, so you can have some input and say like, this is crap, this is what I want, this is good. So please join the beta. It's free, it's open to everyone. We usually push a new build every second week, so you always have the greatest and the latest Max, and you can engage and chat with folks like Zap and have some very insightful discussion. I saw a couple of people on the YouTube chat. I saw Jan, I saw Cheng Su, of course, Chop. So if you want to discuss with users and developers, please join the beta. But I cannot say dates. I'm sorry. And also, we on the roadmap itself, we are, I believe, every release we are kind of update the roadmap itself. So what's being in, what was shipped from beta, what's currently in research, what kind of graduated from research to beta. So usually we push, as soon as we release an update of Max, we update the roadmap as well. So thanks, Thomas, for your question. Sorry, I couldn't really answer.
Great.
For me, the answer is much easier. I don't know.
Do we have any Trekkies in the audience tonight? Let's see that like button getting hit a few times there.
I'm not a massive Star Trek fan, but it was very cool seeing those ships in the 3D Max viewport. It must feel good working on a something with such a history. How long is it? How Star Trek started? What, in the 60s? So.
Mm-hmm. It's over 50 years.
60 years ago.
Yeah, it's this year is the 55th anniversary of the original TV show. which is pretty incredible. Yeah,
Oh,
and
Zap's got one there. Look.
Yeah, nice. A little enterprise there. Well, one of the really cool perks of the job is actually getting the assets. So all the new shows obviously are all done in 3D art for their VFX shots. And since we're building, sorry, my cat's.
No, let me introduce us.
All right, this is Lauren. She's nicer than she looks.
Hello.
But when we put all the ships from the new shows in the game, we actually get the models from CBS to build off of. We have to rebuild them at a lower triangle count, but it is fun to be able to spin around like this is the actual thing they used on the show. That's really cool.
Do they give you the model, or they give you all the textures and everything? Is it ready to go?
No, they give us the model, and sometimes they'll give us the textures, but they have like all kinds of crazy custom shaders, so we don't, we just have to kind of do the best with what we can, and we'll have to rebuild stuff anyway. I mean, obviously we have our own texture pipeline, so we have to make everything fit with that template.
Do you celebrate somehow the 55th anniversary? Do you have something planned?
We do actually, but I can't talk about
it. Another secret.
More secrets. Well, there's I think with all the new stuff on Paramount Plus and all the new Star Trek shows, Star Trek as a brand is trying to be a lot more active, and so there was recently a Star Trek, so Star Wars has May the 4th. And Star Trek is, I think, having 2 holidays. We have First Contact Day in April, which I think is April 5th. And then there's Star Trek Day, which I don't know the actual date, but it's in September. And that's the day that the original Star Trek first aired. So there'll be an event on Star Trek Day as well.
Yeah, cool.
May the 4th a good date to have, though, isn't it? Those guys are winning on the date thing now.
Yeah.
So there's a question in YouTube comments from Christy, and Christy says, "Hi Tom, what's your favorite part of the spaceship building?"
That's a good question. I mean, we have a philosophy at Cryptic, and this might be broader than Cryptic, but we can sort of generally categorize people in a few different buckets of starters and finishers. So people who are starters are people who like to start new projects. They get a lot of energy when they're starting something new. They look at the blank canvas and they're like, this is exciting, can't wait to work on this. And then finishers are the people who look at something that's almost done and they say, I know exactly what I need to do to really take this to the next level and detail it out and polish it up. And so I'm definitely a finisher. I really like I like it when it's almost done. And I think there was a little clip in the video of like adding all the decals and all the tiny little things that really just kind of bring it to life and add all the scale to it. So I think towards the end is a lot of fun for me. I also really just like the process of designing something new, of building a new Star Trek ship, like creating something new with our concept artist. That's always really, really fun.
There's another great question, but I'm a bit embarrassed because I can't pronounce his name. So I'm really very sorry.
Chop.
I think it's Hovj Kop.
Prvoje Chop. I call him Chopmeister. That's easier.
Call him
Chopmeister. Okay, I see one knows who he is, doesn't he? So he asks, not an STO player, but since there is just one material, I'm wondering about the map resolution versus ship screen size. In my limited experience, it's hard to get big objects to look good with less than 4K.
Yeah, so our tiling really helps us out there. Since we're not doing bakes, we do use 2K textures, partly because just the age of our engine, that is something that we could theoretically improve soon if we couldn't do it now. But because our tile, the portions of our texture tile horizontally, that means we can make our UV islands pretty big, like bigger than 2K wide if we want to. And so that helps keep the resolution good. And these ships they're hero assets in the sense of the player, they're at the center of the screen and the player can kind of zoom in, but they're not, usually we don't have them, they're not at person scale. So it's not like a lot of these you can't just walk up next to, right? So we have a maximum zoom on the camera for the ship, so that it also kind of protects us from the textures breaking down. If you get too close, you can't really get too close to them. But we've got a couple ways to deal with that.
speechless. What's the audience? What's the player's favorite ship? Is there a favorite?
Yeah, I mean, everybody loves the Enterprise, and then everybody has their favorite flavor of Enterprise. Usually, you know, a lot of people, I mean, one of the best ones is probably the Enterprise from the Next Generation. A lot of our players are as a player base, our demographics skew a bit older. So people who grew up with, you know, the Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager. So ships from those shows tend to do really well. The Defiant, you know, the Enterprise D, the Voyager, all that stuff. But you know, all the things from the new shows are really popular too. The Discovery, the La Sirena from Picard, all that stuff has been really well received.
Here's a nerdy question. Have you ever met any of the actors from either the films or the TV shows?
I have, yeah. So one of the best perks of the job is promoting the game at Star Trek Las Vegas, which is an annual convention. And you know, we usually had a booth there where we promoted the game, and we were able to recruit a lot of Star Trek talent to do their VO for the game. So I think we've got 30 or 40 at this point Star Trek actors who've reprised their role. And some of them will actually come to the studio to record. A lot of them record in LA, but some of them actually visit Cryptic. So I've gotten to have dinner with Denise Crosby, who plays Tasha Yar in the first season of Next Generation, Garrett Wong, who plays Ensign Kim on Voyager, Rekha Sharma, who was on Battlestar Galactica and Discovery. So that's been really cool getting to meet those people.
Cool.
Yeah, amazing.
Do we have
any more questions in the forum? Or
I do, and I always have questions. What
Yeah.
version of 3ds Max are you working on?
So I'm using 2021 right now. I need to there's a lot of cool stuff in 2022 that I want to mess around with, but I need to port over all my stuff. You know, I have to reset everything up. So I've just kind of been holding off on that.
And how often does the studio upgrade?
We actually just now got set up on Autodesk's whatever the subscription package is, the license for that. So up until that point, we'd been on 2018 as a studio, and I think we're talking about moving everybody up to newer version. But you know, when you've got so many artists and we've got a lot of specialized scripts for exporting our assets into the game, and we just got to make sure all that stuff isn't going to break when we go to a higher version. So but you know, I want to, because there are a lot of things with the newer versions of Max, especially all the smart extrude stuff that just makes your life so much easier.
Well, I think we could see that from your presentation, that the new tools are totally aimed at you.
Yeah. We appreciate it.
But you'll need to kind of rewire your brain to relearn to model.
Yeah.
So you can do something else in a teapot, right, Zap?
Right.
That's just setting Zap up for his next presentation.
Yeah.
Zap, I had to. I'm sorry.
Pro.
just to bring the audience down, for their expectations there.
Yeah, those have to lower quite heavily.
Do you use the retopology tool because you have models from visual effects, so they'll be quite heavy. We haven't tried that yet. We actually haven't. I'm glad you brought that up, because it really hadn't occurred to me that we could try to do that with some of those high poly models that we get. We haven't had to work with one of those in a little while, so yeah, it's worth a shot. I should try that out once next time we do that. It does an amazing job, definitely. I love it.
I have a question for Bruno or Zap. Why, talking of the retopology tool, why is it a extra download and not built into Max?
A couple of reasons, and it might be something that we're going to do a bit more in the future. The goal was to be able to release more often, so we can actually release something between release. We can release along the release. It's just to have we can also, if there's some defect, we don't have to wait a couple of months. We can just ship them almost overnight. And the goal is to maybe reduce the installer slightly. So if someone actually don't need to reuse any retuple, well, they might not need to install it. But that's
exactly why it came up, because I went to do a whole load of retopo work the other day in I think it was 22, and I was like, oh, I haven't downloaded it yet, and because I was looking for it because I'd been using it in 21.
And that's also a thing. That's something. So that's a new feature of Max that we could release to previous releases of Max, instead of just having something, let's say for Thomas, that worked with 2021 and above. So maybe we could have something that will work with previous version of Max as well. So we're going to expose that new feature to, old releases of Max. So it doesn't mean that we can do that for every feature, but at least that's something that, opened the door to that kind of release process.
That's quite useful, actually.
Yeah, it's a thing we're trying out to be able to have like a shorter pipeline to the users and get stuff quicker. So we build certain things as that we call components, which means they are separate install and can go along with Max if you need it. And also the thing that it might work, in some cases might work for all the versions as well. So it's a win-win hopefully for everybody.
So you could stay, for example, on 2021, but get some of the feature of 2022 and above. So you don't need to do the whole migration of the full studio moving to a new release of Max, but you still get the new good stuff.
That would also work with departments as well. So it becomes almost departmentalized, where the modeling department might need different tools than, say, the animation or the lighting teams.
Yeah.
Cool.
Great.
Olga just asked me to pronounce Juviets.
Hold it closer.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, well done. And cheers as well.
Cheers to everyone.
Na zdrowie.
You're getting better and better by the minute.
As the Bulgarians say, if you want to learn how to say na zdrowie, just say nice driveway. Then you're close enough.
Yeah, almost.
Yeah.
Should we then move to our next presentation, which is Zap? I know he has something cool to share with us.
Do I? No, well, don't oversell this now. This is going to be a relaxed little random things that you may or may not know actually works in Max, because something that I find is that people actually don't know that features are there that have been there for maybe quite some time. So that's what I sort of plan to do a little round robin off. So shall I start?
Share your
start a cooking show.
You want me to share my screen? Yeah, I can do that. And then this is extremely unplanned and will be completely live and 100% free form. So yell when I'm over time. So yes, I hope you're seeing my screen and everything. It's working, I think.
Yeah.
You should be seeing a green robot. And some of those who remember my previous life working with Mental Ray might recognize this guy, because a long time ago I did an FX PhD course teaching people how to render stuff, how to put stuff into, put objects into real world backgrounds with shadows and all this kind of stuff. And it was all back then done with Mental Ray, and the render like this would take, minutes, whatever. And it was a lot of setup to do. And I was going to think we should maybe compare a little bit the render time today of doing this and how to set it up today, because the render time today is actually this, because this is not a rendering. This is actually the Max viewport in real time. So if I want to see my animation with my robot, I can just hit play and we have my animation. So I think in a way we come a fairly long way in Max, what we can do. And especially the work we put into making the viewport be more of a tool that you can use for look dev and stuff like that. So I'm planning to show a little bit of that. And I'm going to make a brand new scene from scratch. Oh, and I get an error. That's awesome. That's new. That has literally never happened.
Hit
gonna
the light
reset.
for every crash or every error
crash,
that...
yes. So since my skill in modeling, I actually made that robot myself, but that's the most complicated thing I ever done. So I will stick to what I'm great at modeling: teapots on planes. And this will be, because I'm a developer, this will be developer arts. Teapots on planes is the, Snakes on a Plane was a movie for a while, but Teapots on a Plane, I'm not sure Hollywood has catched up to that. So how do you make a teapot on a plane look nice? Well, we can start out by getting a teapot somewhere not in the gray void, which we do by using the OSL shader for the HDRI environment. There's a bunch of shipping environments with Max. I will just pick one, which kind of looks like we're on Mars or something. So if we look around now, we see our teapot is now on almost Mars. It's really not Mars, but let's pretend it's Mars. I mean, it gets more sci-fi. We pretend it's Mars. So that's a great start, but we want to have the lighting come from this environment too. And because if I drag this into my material editor and do stuff like rotate my environment around, it doesn't change the lighting at all. So what's wrong? Well, there's 100 buttons you can push to make that happen, but it's much easier to just pick the high quality mode. And now we'll see, let me turn the grid off, that we have some lighting showing up. So if I change the exposure of the environment, you'll see it gets darker. And if I say I rotate the environment, you can see that the light comes from various different angles. So clearly now it's working. I have some light from the environment. Okay, that's awesome. Now we see these shadows that are kind of flickering a little, and there's various people think this is good or bad. Basically, what is happening, there's a progressive rendering step in the viewport that makes all the shadows from the environment. And if we let that happen, we actually get a very accurate shadow. Let's compare this to actually rendering this in Arnold. And the Arnold makes it a little shinier by default, but we see we have basically the same soft shadow in Arnold as we actually have in the viewport. So the viewport is doing a really good job. But if we're not liking this flickering, we do have the option to turn that off because it's called progressive skylight. We have one option, we can turn it just plainly off, so we don't have it at all. That means we don't really get any shadows from the teapot much. We get some ambient occlusion that we can tweak till it looks cool, and maybe that's enough for us. Or we can turn it on and increase this fade time, which means that the nice version will kind of fade in slowly over time, so it's less distracting. It's up to you what you want to use. I'm actually gonna pick the version where I actually simply turn it off for this demonstration. So okay, we have the teapot, we have the environment, we have some lighting. Now we want to put some kind of material on this teapot, and we're going to use the physical material, which I advise you to always use for everything you do, regardless of what renderer you're using. You're crazy, Zap. Why would I do that if I'm in V-Ray? Well, actually, I think you should, because if you're working with the physical material, not only do you see everything correctly in the viewport, but you can basically switch render. Now, I don't have V-Ray installed at this millisecond, but as you see, the teapot got a little shiny. If I actually switch to Arnold and render it, we'll see we effectively have exactly the same image. And if I'm in Arnold now and turn up, say, the metalness and make it the teapot a little rougher, so I get some blurry reflections on it, and I switch back to the viewport, we'll see, yes, I have the blurry reflections in the viewport too. So we spent a lot of work of having the viewport match the rendering for the physical material. And the physical material is supported in V-Ray and Corona and all these kind of things. So if you work with it, you get these benefits. But now we want to put the teapot somewhere on the ground nicely. So we're actually going to bring out the good old matte shadow material and just assign this to our plane. And boom, there we have the teapot is now sitting on the ground, except when I rotate the environment, it's all kind of floating and it's weird. And if I zoom in and out, it grows and shrinks, and that's kind of ugly. So in our HDR environment, we have this cool little feature called ground projection. So if I turn that on and set the scale in a nice way that fits this particular scene, whoops, come again slowly, there we go. And now the teapot is actually stuck to the ground. And if I zoom in and zoom out, and I can actually rotate around. So now we have the teapots in the desert on Mars. Or let's pretend it's Mars. Actually, I know how to make this Mars. We make the light a little redder. There we go. Now this is definitely Mars, right? Oops. Oh, I canceled it. I had such a nice Mars. There we go. Okay, we have Mars. We have a teapot on Mars. Excellent. And it's kind of shiny, but that's a boring material. How can we get cool materials into Max? Well, something we added relatively recently was the PBR importer. So if we run the PBR importer, oops, I had previously acted trial of the demo, clear that out. What I do is that I just say import files and I pick a folder full of downloaded PBR material. Let me pick something here. I can paving stone. This is nice. So here we have all the various textures, ambient occlusion, color, displacement, blah, blah, blah. I just select all, hit open. It automatically figures out what is what. It's basing this on some rules on this page. You can actually edit them if you want. And it builds a material. So if I select my teapot and say create one material, then I have my teapot made with paving stones on it. Like this. Actually, I think I'm going to make this whiter again so we see the colors of stuff. So there we have our teapot with some paving stones on them. And let's be very generous. Let's add a second teapot. See my extreme skill in modeling. Now I made 2 teapots. I can actually, from the PBR importer, import an entire folder. So there's a whole bunch of stuff I downloaded from stuff like there's various sites called, what's it called again? PBR Heaven and freepbrs.com and all sorts of places. You can download these kind of maps. And here you see it's built all the materials it found in these folders. Some stuff it didn't find. So we have down here messages that it found something on preview it ignored because that's not part of the actual material. And then it found some stuff here that it didn't recognize. And this is actually okay because this is my test. So I have Swedish versions of the materials, which it doesn't understand. So that's all fine. It shouldn't understand them. So let's pick some of these. If I fold up the materials and say, I want to take the metal plates. So we uncheck everything but the metal plates, select my teapot, create materials, and boom, I have a nice metal plate material. And it automatically populates this on my material editor. So it makes a PBR material, connects all the slots for me automatically. It's normal maps and everything. And I'm actually going to, for the sake of this demo, I'm going to kill these displacement maps because since the viewport doesn't do displacement, I want to do one-to-one comparison to what happens if I render in Arnold. And here we go. I say active shade in Arnold, so we can compare the difference in result between. So this is the Arnold rendering. Well, I actually did get displacement on this one. Oh yeah, I never deleted that. So yes, we get this one with displacement because I was sloppy in deleting this. And this one is without displacement. But if we look at this really close up, so this is what it looks in Arnold. And if I switch back to the viewport, the difference is, yeah, the viewport doesn't do real reflections. But other than that, you get a really nice quality to it.
Yeah.
And it's looking fairly nice, right? Then how much time do I have? 4 minutes left. Okay. I had one more thing I was planning on showing, or I can continue spinning teapots. Can I do it? Okay, yeah, I'm going to do it a little quick.
Keep going. It's good.
Keep going. Yeah. So a thing that people have problems with in Max is when you want to put textures on a large object or on a lot of objects to make them random. So here we have a scene where I put on a wood texture, and this wood texture obviously is exactly the same on all these one. And here I have it repeated 4x4 times on a bigger piece, and the repeat is glaringly obvious. And how can we get around this repeat problem? Well, the way this scene is set up now is that this is a PBR material, and I'm using the OSL bitmap rather than the legacy Max bitmap. And one of the interesting parts that is a bit of different thinking when you work with OSL is like in the classic Max bitmap, you have all the settings for your UV channels and all that. It's like built into it, but that's not the way it works in OSL. The UV coordinate is an input and it just has an automatic default. The automatic default is just UV space 1. So when you do nothing, you get UV space 1 without doing anything. If you want any other UV space, you actually have to pick the UV channel shader and connect it. So if I say connect this one, of course, I'm still already at 1, so nothing happens. If I said channel 2, which I don't have, so that didn't work either. But I can now take UV channel 1 and put something like a UV transform on it. Whoops. Let me do that again correctly. There we go. So now I have a UV transform on there, and I can actually scale it by, you see, I can basically scale it in real time here. So now the cool thing we can try as like a first stab at randomizing this texture is actually take a noise texture and apply this to the offset. We can actually do stuff with any of these inputs. So what will happen now is we get this interesting psychedelic thing. Doesn't look much like wood anymore. But if we make this randomization bigger, say make it 10 times bigger, and we can tweak the amount here, you see, we, of course, for wood, this is probably not the way you want to randomize it, but imagine this was like a gravel texture or something like that, where you wouldn't catch these squiggliness as obviously. It's one of the many tricks you can use. But I think that the main take home here is to understand that you feed in the UV coordinates when working with OSL. Now, we're going to do it though in a different way. I'm going to copy this texture name and I'm going to delete these. And I'm going to load in the new thing we added recently, which is the where is it now? Bitmap random tiling. And I'm going to pick the same texture we had. Oops, not twice, only once. There we go. And for the sake of the demo, I'm going to turn down some knob or turn off a thing. I'll explain that in a second. If I now connect this to my base color, we'll see first it's much smaller, and that's because there's a default scale of 25%. So now we see, okay, but this is the same problem, Zap. You didn't fix anything, you're a moron. It's just diagonal, yeah, because this shader makes a randomization of your texture coordinate. And this moment it's set to do it only over rotation. So it's only random rotations. So if I change this random seed, you will see it will flip around in various random rotations. Okay, you say that's still useless, Zap. It's the same freaking rotation for everything. Well, that's because we can take and feed something like the node handle, which is a number that is different per object, and we can plug that into the seed that we were just changing. And now we'll see that for these different ones, the rotation is now different. So we have a random rotation for each. And that's my time up. But I'm going to continue because I'm almost done. So the rotation, again, for wood maybe doesn't make much sense, but say we play with the scale instead. And we say we only have like a 5-degree random rotation, and we can play with the offset. So now if we look at these, this might actually be almost useful. It's not obvious anymore that these have the same texture, and you actually have the ability to tweak the hue. Okay, that was a lot of hue tweaking. You can tweak the saturation, you can change the value of them and stuff like that. So you get a randomization of the color, which can also make sense. But Zap, you say, this still doesn't fix this one. This is a big slab of a single material. I can clearly say this, see that this still repeats. Well, that's why you have this one called randomize by UV position. If I turn this on in this mode where I tweaked some things to be off, we'll see that, yeah, all that really happens is it splits this thing into UV squares where the size is 1, and just this different randomness in each. Let me turn the actually rotation randomness on again so it's more obvious. okay, how is this useful? This is not good, Zap. This is crap. Well, what you can do is that you can turn up the wiggliness of these lines. And now you see, suddenly these are not straight lines anymore. And actually you can set the scale of your wiggliness and how wiggly the wiggle should be. And now suddenly it's a lot more less obvious that it actually started out as squares. And actually we can blend the edges with the edge fuzz here. And if we now back off on all these insane color changes that I put in just for illustration's sake, now suddenly we have a texture that, again, for the case of wood, this is probably not super useful, but I used wood because it's so obvious to see what's happening. But if I pick something different, like for instance, that paving stone we had before.
Mars rocks.
Yeah. So for this use case, it might actually be slightly more useful. And one interesting bit, if you start playing with this, I have to show you this too. If you do it with the normal map, so let me do it with the normal map here. We'll see, we get our normal map for the stones. And now it's been rotated all sorts of places. And actually you can't rotate the normal map because you break things. Actually, if I take and connect it now to the normal slot, we'll see it looks kind of weird. Some of the bumps are going in and it's all kind of broken. So what you need to do is check this box, texture is normal map. And when you do that, the bumps will actually look correct. So you wonder, okay, now I did this with the normal map, but how do I do this with all the other textures, my color and stuff? Well, I'm going to show you how you do that. You'd think you have to copy this one and make sure you have all the same randomness and stuff like that, but you actually don't need to do that at all. I'm just going to put in a normal OSL, look up and pick the paving stone again. I'm going to connect this to my base color. And now if I zoom in, you see it's completely wrong, right? You see the base, the color is in one way and the normal map is, it doesn't match at all. But all I have to do is to take the UV output of this randomizer and hook it up to the UV input of the color map, and boom, they are now completely aligned. So the color map and the normal map are in sync. And if I want to change anything about the randomization here, I can just do that and it will change for all of them. So here we have a completely randomized paving stone texture. And to be clear, this will never repeat. It doesn't matter how big I make this plane, it will never look the same. So maybe this is a bit extreme for the paving stone, but if you had like a lawn texture or something, this is like the perfect way to make a lawn that will literally never repeat. So those were the fun little thing I was thinking of showing, and that's it from the Swedish end.
Brilliant.
Thank you,
The
Zap.
Swedish chef.
The
Very
Swedish.
cool.
You know, Swedish doesn't actually sound like that. That's how Norwegian sounds. The Muppet guys clearly heard a Norwegian guy.
Sorry to all our Norwegian followers tonight.
Jump in quick, Zap, because a couple of weeks ago I got excited about the OSL color correct node. It was amazing. So that's render agnostic. So you could be using V-Ray, Corona,
yes,
any kind of renderer. Sorry, Arnold. I don't use it, but you could do. How about the PBR material that you just showed? Is that something that can plug into all these renderers as well?
Yes, because the PBR material is actually just a wrapper around the physical material. So inside that pretty little tiny simple to use box is actually the whole physical material. And so it's actually just a scripted wrapper. You can find it in the implementation of it in the Max script folders. And so from the point of view of the renderer, it's actually a physical material. So it doesn't see any difference than any other physical material.
So if you set up all your materials using a PBR material, for example, then you could be truly render agnostic. It wouldn't matter. You could just switch renderers and it would look the same.
In principle, yes. Yes, that's the whole idea.
Okay, nice. Really nice.
So think of it just as a simplified front end. It's like the physical material light. It just shows you the input that you have for the classical game style PBR workflow with your, color, your roughness, your metalness, and these kind of things, which are parameters that the physical material already has. It just shows you only those basically. So it's like a cut down mode basically.
So for example, I like using V-Ray. The rest of my team really like using Corona. But if we all sort of settled on the PBR material, it would just be interchangeable.
It should, yes. That's the
and plus you get a fantastic viewport benefit as well.
Yeah.
So
that's the whole plan. We're working on trying to build a set of tools that should work across render. And of course, I know from the point of view of the render developers, they want to promote their own special sauce, obviously, because that's their mindset. And for me, it's actually sort of, if you don't actually, even though Arnold ships with Max, I tell people that, if you don't actually need any of the super specific features in Arnold, start out trying to use like generic features, because what if you want to change your mind later, pick a different render, you haven't locked yourself in, right? And I did it for V-Ray and whatever. And as long as the physical material does what you want, and it's actually, what physically happens inside V-Ray is it actually does an internal conversion to basically the V-Ray material under the hood. So you're sort of actually rendering with the V-Ray material anyway. It's just, again, that the physical material becomes like a special front end to the V-Ray material actually. So.
Any questions to that in the comments or from the panel?
I see you're dishing out money there, Simon.
Yeah, but that was 5 minutes ago, so don't worry. The budget's
That is good.
No one did it.
What about converting over to, say you're wanting to change to this workflow? Is there a good way of being able to convert your scene over to PBR? Or physical materials?
We do have the scene converter in Max, which does some of that, especially if you have older stuff like done for the old standard material and things like that. You can do it. We don't have published anything if you want to convert over from, say, V-Ray or something like that. All the stuff we have been looking at. I don't think, Bruno, we're shipping any of that currently. I don't know what will happen.
No, we can convert from other renderers to PBR, physical material.
Yeah.
Well,
it's not perfect. I mean, obviously, because it might go from a material that does more. You might be lossy conversion, but it's often working reasonably well.
What's the latest on Material X? Is that still a thing, or?
Oh, yes. Okay. Big topic.
How much time do we have?
Yeah, exactly. How many hours do you want to spend on this? I'm actually quite heavily involved with Material X, as well as I'm fairly heavily involved with OSL. There's a lot of convergence happening behind the scenes actually between what OSL can do and Material X currently. And we're looking inside Autodesk for Material X being like the transport mechanism for materials. But this is all very like in the middle of being designed and a little bit too early days to make any kind of promises, but it's definitely still a thing. We haven't released anything yet, but stay tuned, join the beta.
So there was a couple of things on beta. I mean, it's an ongoing things, and we don't want to release something that's kind of half-baked. So that's why we want to make sure that we're doing the right thing. So again, join the beta if you want to try some stuff. Give your opinion, feedbacks. It's always appreciated.
But just generally, from what Zap just talked about, going down or looking into the PBR workflow, you'll be safe to, if there are any changes in the future, it will all be taken care of.
Yes, basically. Like that will convert over to Material X for the most part. Of course, we do have one thing we have to think about, that in Max, since the OSL stuff in Max is completely open and free, and anybody can literally write any OSL shader they would ever dream of, which is not exactly what the current Material X supports. I mean, that cannot be supported by any of the standard Material X nodes, because if you write the, I don't know, tartan's, Scottish skirt shader in OSL, which you can do if you want, that wouldn't exist in Material X. There's a sort of a way to build that node, and the node can have an implementation in OSL, but then we're getting very deep in the rabbit hole of making your own Material X nodes, which is like, don't worry about that yet. Relax.
You're losing us, Zap. You're losing us. We're all going. He's off in his spaceship.
Yes.
But I think it's all very exciting. It's great that materials are converging, and
I would say I have never seen such many good signs of synergy in the industry ever, basically, in my whole years in this. So I'm very hopeful that we will get kind of a standard that can be very useful across a lot of things. But that means also there's a lot of ducks to align and a lot of cats to herd. I'm actually even official cat herder on a particular corner of this thing. So if I don't mistake the cats for ducks, it will probably all work out somehow.
Okay, I think on that note, I was trying to think what you call a cat and a duck. A combination of two. Say no more.
Yeah.
We're gonna leave that one there, I think.
Leave that. Yeah.
Leave it there. Thanks up, and we'll probably have some more questions later on from the audience, but I think it's time to move on to our next presentation. And Ciro, you ready?
Yes. Let's see how I can top what Zap did. I'm going to talk about OSL, so okay. You can all see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So first of all, a big thanks to Autodesk, and in particular Bruno, for inviting me to present here, and a big thanks to everyone on 3ds London, the team to organize this, make it possible. I introduced myself in the beginning, but just a quick recap. My name is Ciro. I am originally from Portugal, and I've been working in computer graphics for quite a while now. I've been working in the animation industry, visualization, product visualization, and now I'm working on architectural visualization. And for that, I can show the next slide. I'm working for the last 4 years at Hayes Davidson. So if you don't know us, have a look on our website and our Instagram page, and I think you'll find some cool stuff there. Also, another thing I wanted to highlight is since last year, I've been part of the Studio Max and Arnold's beta program, which is a great opportunity to be closer to the developers, to see the backstage. And I really appreciate this opportunity, because it's quite easy to go to like YouTube or go to CG Press and complain about Autodesk, like things don't work. But what I found out, like, those are not the correct places to complain, because literally no one is going to check that. So any feedback that you have, which might be valid, it's not going to be heard. So there is public forums, there is a Slack channel, there is like the beta program, for example, where I am at the moment. Those are the places where you can tell them like what is wrong, what doesn't work. And I think also open my mind to the fact that Max is used in a lot of industries. So it's used in architectural visualization, obviously, but it's used in visual effects. For example, Scanline FX and ILM use Studio Max. Is used in animation. It's used in a lot of industries. So they have to balance like what they do in order to touch on all of those topics. So it's an easy job, but I appreciate the fact that they have still people, they have families, they have deadlines, they have budgets the same way that we do. So yeah, it's a great opportunity, and I think a lot of the work I've been doing is also based on the cool stuff they have there and the cool tools. Now, if I move on, I mentioned Hayes Davidson, but today I'm going to cover some of my personal work, and not necessarily the work itself, but the amazing tool that Zap mentioned, which is OSL. Right? Now, OSL, I'm not going into much depth in technical sides of things, but OSL was developed initially by Sony Pictures ImageWorks to be used with Arnold, their main render. But because it's, as you can see, open shading language, it means it can be implemented in other, and the renders can be implemented in other softwares. And I think the first OSL shader actually I tried was this one. So this was back in 2018. And this OSL shader really proves the point that whatever is done in OSL can be used in any DCC that supports OSL. So for example, this shader was, I believe, initially done for Maya, but I was able to bring this OSL shader into Studio Max and start playing with this. And this actually was the first time I was like, whoa, this OSL thing, it looks really cool. First of all, because as you can see, it can do really cool stuff. And second, because it supports, if a render supports it, then it means my workflow can be way more flexible. And I think that's what I'm going to try to show you today. So if I move to the next slide, introduces the 365 material challenge. And basically this challenge was a challenge that I imposed myself creating one material each day for an entire year. So that gives you 365 materials. And it was a great way for me to improve my workflow. Some of the textures that you can see here, they are commercial, but the majority of the materials I have here, they were done with Substance Designer. And then it's when I started to learning more OSL, and it started at something very, very shy, like just using the color correction nodes. But the more I use, the more I realized, like, this is really powerful. This allows me so much flexibility. So I think Simon mentioned that point is all the materials you can see here, they are done with physical materials, and they're also done with some Arnold shaders. But the physical materials, the ones you see, you can use them in any render. So it's render agnostic. And because you're working with OSL, it just proves the point that you can be in the studio and working with different renders, and anyone feels more comfortable with the preferred one, and it makes a big difference in workflow. Next slide shows something that I shared a couple of weeks ago on LinkedIn and Twitter, and a lot of people ask me, how I did this, like going from a basic subsurface scattering to something a little bit more realistic. And again, using OSL shaders was the solution. Obviously, because I'm using sheen, I'm using the Arnold standard surface, but the material itself, everything is OSL. It does look something really complex for some people, but I'm going through the process, and you'll see it's actually something really simple. So for the specular roughness, I have this UV transform that creates tiling, and then I'm using an OSL range node, which allows me to flatten the texture to make my roughness something very subtle, but you still have variation on the roughness. Then I have a simple gradient connecting to a color correction, goes to the subsurface color. Then you have this amazing, super cool OSL nodes. It's called OSL Uber Noise, contains a list of a lot of noises, then with a lot of settings allows you to create amazing things connected to a multiply node, which I think this is perhaps my experience with Maya and Hypershades. I have this kind of workflow, and here the multiply node is allowing me a little bit more refined control over the blacks and whites, and allows me the bump not to be so strong. And I think the piece of resistance is this section here. What I wanted, each leaf has a material ID. And I like the effect of this map on the sheen roughness, but I didn't want each leaf to have the same map because your eyes very quickly can pick that. So what I'm doing here, I'm doing an OSL material ID that connects to this OSL switcher, then switch between the different inputs. In this case here, I just have one input, but I want a slight variation in all of these elements, and I want to control that. So what I use, another switcher, one that controls the offset, one that controls the rotation, and everything is controlled by the material ID. So This sounds, really complex when you see it, but once you start it, it makes a lot of sense. And then again, you can select all of these and save it for you to use later and just recycle it. Again, another thing, I'm not by no means I'm not a coder, but here I think I can share a good example of what you can do with OSL. So I managed somehow, I don't know how, but I managed to code this complex front-end. So Seeker Shaders has something very similar, but what happens is if you change your Max version, you have to wait for that plugin to be recompiled. It also is a big pain because if you have to share this material with someone, what happens is you need also to provide the plugin. So if I'm opening this material that was done in 2019 and I'm opening now, I have to go back and get the plugin. Because I'm using an OSL shader, OSL lives inside Max, so I don't have to worry. And as a bonus, I can add my own presets. So I'm not stuck with just the presets you have. So I think it proves the point that OSL, it's a very powerful tool, definitely. Now, a big part of my work is also doing look development, and this is something, it sits between the pre-production and the production stage, and it's what I love to do. Is you create your materials, you bring your assets and make sure they look really good. And one of the key aspects to a very strong look that I've seen is for you to have different lighting scenarios. So I still start my materials with a neutral lighting, but then I want to see how that material or that asset holds in a different lighting scenario. There are a couple of ways I can do that, but definitely one of the ways is just by using the OSL HDR environment, which is an amazing tool, as Zap showed a couple of minutes ago. But then what I have this OSL switcher, and you can see here I have 12 inputs, and very easily I can change between the different HDR maps. And this allows me a lot of flexibility to quickly check how the material is looking in different lighting conditions. And I can pick this and I can go to the next level, because there is another OSL node that allows me to read the frame on a timeline. So what I can do, I can connect that OSL node to the index, and then I can render from frame 0 to frame 12. And each frame, when it starts, it loads a different HDR map. The same principle I'm applying as well with when I'm doing lighting. So I like to approach lighting the same way as a photographer, or in this case, maybe like a director of photography will do in a movie, someone like Roger Deakins. And what I like to do is connect these HDR lights and use them to light my scene. And another easy way to move between the different options that I have is, again, just be using the same principle, the same idea, using a OSL switcher, which provides you with a lot of flexibility. Now, moving into the next, I think here it shows what I'm trying to tell is the fact that when I created this material, one of the things that I did was scanning some brush strokes when you're painting. And I want that in my material. And so I use Substance Designer to create the material. But what was happening, because of the lighting that I was using, a very neutral lighting, I wasn't seeing these details. So you could go and just say, okay, I have to increase the bump a little bit more. But by having this system, as you can see here, allows me very quickly just to see how the material will behave when the lighting is in different sides and how it's reacting. And there you have the material which will look good in any scenario. So I think the main idea of this section here is just to show you that you can use OSL for materials, but you can also use OSL to help you and to make you more efficient when you're lighting and using HDR maps, for example. Now, the next bit goes along with Zap mentioned in terms of using OSL to hiding tiling and hiding repetition. In this case here, it's not necessarily the use of that OSL nodes, but what I was trying to do here, I was trying to creating a texture that wouldn't have repetition and tiling across all of this. So what I had to do was using different UV tiles. And these UV tiles, what you can do, you don't have to worry in terms of like how they connect to a certain extent, but you can export this and you can go to Substance Painter. So I do my materials first in Substance Designer, And then I go to Substance Painter if I have to, just to paint in some really complex situations like this. So as you can see, I have really nice detail. Don't worry about the gaps between the UVs, because Substance Painter is smart enough to know that he has to paint the same thing on the other side. So there is no seams that you can see. But once you're happy, you can export these, and then you can go back to Studio Max. Now, Max has a tool called multi-tile, which allows you to load these type of files, but I find sometimes it doesn't work quite well. So you can use just a very basic OSL bitmap lookup, and what you can do, you can go to the load UDIM, and then you can select one of the textures that you want to work with. Now, once you select one of the textures, usually the first one, it will automatically recognize you have 3 additional textures that you have to use. So Arnold by default, they support UDIM, but if the renderer you're using doesn't, this is a good solution for you if you want to also explore this workflow. Now moving to the next one, just a quick example of how OSL really makes your life easier. In this situation here is the same principle of pushing the material that you're doing, in this case the car shader that I was doing, to the next level and to improve it to look good. So to create something like this, I have here in terms of scratches in specific locations. Again, Ciro Shaders has a scratch plugin, but it's the same thing with OSL shader. It's way more flexible. Obviously, what you're seeing here in this preview, it's way too strong because I just want to make it for you to be visible. But it shows how powerful the OSL is, and the fact that someone did this and it was using in Clarice, but I can go and I can pick the code and I can use it and use it in Max. So it's great the fact that you can create tools and you can use tools that people use in other softwares, but you can import the same look and use it the same way inside Max with OSL. Next bit is the rain ripples. Now, full credits of this goes to a great artist called Mads. We have Arnold's Slack channel, and he shared this OSL nodes to create like this water, raindrops ripples. When I saw this, I was like, wow, this is really good. I want to do something like this. So I picked the OSL shader. I brought it inside Max, and one of the cool things that I think Zap show as well is the fact that what do you do most of the times? I would say, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think 90% of the OSL shaders, you can see it in realistic modes in a viewport. So this saved me here a lot of time, because imagine if I have to tweak the settings, do a very small animation, a couple of frames just to see if it looks good. The time that I will spend doing that, doing this took me a couple of seconds on the viewport, and then I was happy. And then the result, as you can see here in the preview. But it really shows how you can use OSL to improve your workflow and even sometimes to be inspired to do something really cool. And I mean, I could go on with how I'm using OSL on my projects. Obviously, this is things then also convert to professional projects, but wouldn't be fair for me to finish this section without mentioning Mads again. He's an amazing artist, an amazing coder, and some of the things he does, it's just unbelievable. Like, for example, I don't need to use the Phoenix Ocean texture anymore. He has this OSL node that creates this beautiful like waves and shade, ocean shader. Who know that you could do a real-time cloud system inside Max, right? And you can see it, how cool it looks. He also has a Gumroad page where you can download for free some of the OSL nodes. So for example, this one here allows you to create a snow mask or even a dust mask. This one is another one I use quite a lot, which allows me to blend between different normal maps. But again, definitely someone you should follow and see his work, and it's amazing, like the kind of stuff you can do with OSL. So hopefully, I think maybe you got excited about using OSL and to really try. And one of the things I'm starting doing is people ask, they don't know how to make the transition between the legacy modes to OSL. So I'm recording a couple of tutorials, something very short, like 4-6 minutes, just explaining the basic steps for you to, okay, if you want to do this, you have to do that. And hopefully that will help you to start working with OSL. And that's it for me. And thank you so much for watching.
Brilliant.
Yeah, amazing.
Thank you.
That was awesome. Thank you, Ciro.
Thank you so
that was
much for
awesome.
sharing.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing your personal work. It's really nice.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Well, yeah, the OSL is, I love it. It's introduced such a flexibility into your workflow. It's amazing. And I think, Simon, what you ask is true. Is when you work with physical materials and OSL shaders, then it doesn't matter which render you use. As long as it supports it, you can use it.
Very exciting, yeah.
I'm not a technical guy by any means, so this might be a dumb question, but do we see, I mean, one of the things that we struggle with, working in games is getting parity between a program like Substance Designer and then what you actually see in the real-time renderer. And I'm just kind of curious if OSL might be an answer to that in the future of like integrating that into game engine renderers someday. I don't know if there's too much overhead on this or if that's a possibility.
That is, I would say, in the future. I don't think we're quite there to have the actual runtime OSL happening in the game engine quite yet. But I mean, look at what we're doing in Max. We're basically transcoding the OSL code into HLSL, which is what the viewport is running, and which is what many game engines are running too. So in theory, in principle, we sort of what we're doing in Max, we're sort of showing the principle that you could actually transcode this to something that could be running on a game engine. That stuff isn't exactly maybe like there yet, but what you can do already, you can run something like bake to texture in Max. So whatever complex shade tree you have on your thing with OSL, you can bake it down to a texture with the bake to texture feature, which you then can hand off to your game engine, and it will basically look the same. It won't be running the runtime shader, but who cares? Unless it's a dynamic thing, like the water droplets, you would lose the water droplets unless you bake them for every frame, right? But whatever, if it's just a squiggly thing or some marble or whatever, you can basically use the bake to texture and bake it and use that in the engine.
Nice.
So question for Ciro. I feel that you're kind of sitting on a gold mine of knowledge with your 365 materials challenge. So what's the next step for this? I mean, are you going to write a book or something? I feel that you're kind of sitting on something huge. I'm just wondering what are you going to do with this? It's awesome.
Well, I did a talk for Autodesk University last year, where I cover a little bit of what I talked today about using OSL. I'm releasing these materials slowly, but I'm releasing them, and I make them in a way that you can use in any renderer, right? Although I love Arnold, but it just, physical materials OSL make it easy. But like I said, I'm trying to slowly sharing this knowledge, like doing short videos, just explaining how it works, and hopefully, if you have anything specific, definitely I will. My idea with this personal project is also, once I finish them, I share the knowledge. Like this is how I did it. So on my art station, I usually put a couple of steps and explain what I did, just to, because sometimes even like a couple of months, like I have no idea how I did this. I have to go back and check. It's like, I don't know. So it's even for myself to keep my sanity, just to make sure,
I have a question. Has Hayes Davidson started adopting a lot of this workflow in the architectural visualization work? Let me rephrase it. Is it been experimented with more by the ArcViz artists that you work with?
I think so, yeah, because like I said, this is stuff that I do on my free time, but it reflects then on the work that I do. So I do have questions when people say, oh, how exactly you did this, and why are you using this? So it does reflect to a certain extent. And I think my idea also sharing the knowledge is to make sure other people can use it and they can improve as well. That's my goal, at least.
It can be quite it can be quite difficult because software today is so good that you can do what you were doing 2 or 3 years ago and not learn anything new and still get great results. But yeah, Ciro, it's fantastic to see you pushing it, and that's clearly the way to go, because what I've just seen is fantastic.
Yeah, I've learned a lot.
No, I've been working on this for quite a while, and I remember you have this, I just use V-Ray till the end, or Mentor. And I think each render has its own strengths and weakness, so it does make sense you use it on best projects. So if you have a platform that allows you, so something like OSL and physical materials, it does make sense, because you may start in an industry and you want something which is simpler. So let's say, for example, Corona, which you don't have many settings. So it's something simple. You are starting, you just want to create something. But then if you progress on the career and if you want to do something more complex, using physical materials on OSL opens doors to other renders, right? Even I think Redshift is starting to support OSL. So if you want to jump for GPU, for example, it's another solution.
Yeah, because OSL on GPU has, in the past, that was kind of not possible, but in the last years, this has actually become possible. So we have the OSL on GPU in Arnold. It works on V-Ray, and as you say, Redshift is coming on. There's really a lot of momentum happening with this right now. So it's a good time to be alive.
Yeah, a lot of the projects I do, the personal ones, I use Arnold GPU as well as a testing. Yeah. So it works, that's for sure. Yeah.
Do we have any other? Yeah, sorry, Nigel.
I'm just looking up the language. So OSL is a separate. If you were to write scripts for this, it's a separate language to write them. It's not Python or anything.
No, it's open shading language is its own language. But I mean, it looks similar, syntactically to C or whatever. So if you know some C-like language, it's visually similar, and you just basically have to learn what kind of functions are in it.
I actually have easy to learn.
Well, first of all, you have to put yourself in the mindset of a shader, which is probably the hardest part for most people, because when you think about making a texture, you think, I'm going to draw a line and make a circle or something, but that's not what happens in a shader. In a shader, you basically get given a point. I'm right here on your texture. Please tell me what color you are on this point. So if you want a line there, you have to basically do the math. Am I on this line? Then return the color of the line. If not, then don't return whatever is beside the line. I actually have some courses that are on the Autodesk Learning channel about writing OSL shaders. There's 3 lessons there so far. I'm way overdue with making a 4th, but those are a pretty good, starter tutorial of how to write your own shaders. There's a bunch of them. The great part with this, since it's a cross-render language, you can take a tutorial that was meant for Clarice or whatever, and it will, for the most part, just work the same if you do it in Max. And the good part with Max, where you have it in the viewport, and you literally have the editor in there. You basically click something, you open up, and you just change the code and hit compile, and it immediately, even while you're rendering, just updates, and it updates in the viewport. So you can develop. There's doesn't take any time to develop shaders. You can just type and hit F7, and it just does it, for you. It's pretty fun.
And Mads also has a tutorial explaining how he did the normal blend. So it's a good place just to get just to see how it works. And nothing stops you to open, because there is an icon which you can click to open the OSL, so you can see even the simple ones. You can see how it works. So that's how I did it. The complex funnel. It does sound really posh, but I just literally oh, okay, this here, and that's it. That's how it works. Yeah.
Cool. Sounds like it's something to investigate.
But I've got a quick question. I'm really new to OSL, but what's the OSL 2 slot? in Max as well. Isn't there like an OSL and there's an OSL2 or something? Oh, I'm just making it up now.
Yeah, that part you're making up. I don't know what that is.
Okay, get that.
When you find out, let me know.
Because there's a substance and substance 2 node. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, sorry, yeah, that's what I'm thinking of. Yeah.
Not the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, forget.
It's procedural, but it's not the same thing.
I put myself back on mute, don't worry.
Still, I think going.
Tom, I think you should unmute. I like listening to what you've got to say, even if it's complete nonsense.
Sorry, I got confused.
You and I are at the same level, so I like you asking me the dumb.
Oh, is that right? Yeah. Okay.
So,
Thanks.
Tom, I know where you were going with that because I saw something recently. Maybe it was to do with the Windows tutorials around. There were double OSL shaders. There was the first one, and there was a second one that was wired into the first, I think. It was starting to get quite complicated. How are we doing for time? A few more minutes.
Yeah, we're doing really well, actually. I'm really surprised. We're on schedule. We're just so unlike us. Yeah, we're doing good. If people have any questions.
Is there, I suppose there isn't like a converter or anything. You can't like simply convert things you've already done with a different.
No, that's what Zap answered before.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
I've got some general Max questions.
Actually, you have to frame. You've made Tom need a frame.
Sorry. It's sort of maybe it's a Bruno, but I think on the Stack group that someone was asking earlier this week about the Slate editor and improvements to that, and they were comparing it to say Nuke and it's, I think, watching Zap before power through it. Are there any sort of comments or thoughts on where you want to actually progress or push that further?
I have a comment. I'm going to jump in here because I love the Slate editor, and I resisted it for a few years and then jumped into it, and it was fantastic. I tell you what I would love is because I can't remember who it was. I think it was Ciro was saying that he did stuff, and then he had to try and remember how he did it a few months later. And I think if you could write notes in the Slate editor, that would be absolutely incredible. Just because I can do it in, you can do it in Rhino. If you're using Grasshopper for Rhino, you can write notes and stuff. To be able to do that would be absolutely fabulous. That would be
that's an excellent idea, actually. And I thought about that myself, that it would be because I'm the same. When I wake up on Monday, I don't know what the hell I did Friday because I'm an old fart, so I forget things. So yes, having notes that could be in every shader node. I mean, it's not even technically super hard for us to do something like that. So, if you ask me why we haven't, then I will just run the other way. And the reality is we have an infinitely long list of things we want to do, and some things just get before other things for various reasons. Like this, you have no clue how many things I would like to do tomorrow, but I can't. And this is one of them. So it's a brilliant idea, and we probably should look pretty seriously in it, because I don't even think it would be terribly hard to place up. Have notes attached to shader nodes. Shouldn't be rocket surgery at all. And you can actually sort of do it yourself with custom attributes.
I love that.
But it's a little finicky, but it actually would work, sort of. So
could you add to that note? Could it become like a transcript of basically how you've built it, and it just adds another line to it, so you end up with this little note track that you wire into the actual material or the shader?
Yeah, I don't know. I was thinking of something more manual than that, but yeah.
Let's leave it.
There's a lot of
fantastic. Yeah, fantastic.
There's a lot that we could do, but people are asking for nodes, groups, compounds, all kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I'd say that Slate is a bit old now. it took me a while before actually, adopt it. And I was giving 3ds Max demo, and I felt a bit ashamed to kind of still use the old one. So at some point, I did, I took the hit and I actually do it. But I don't know if some of you watched the, I've showed some of this at my last AU presentation. It was shown also at the Vision series last year, but there's some work on the Maya end, which is, the project is called LookDevX, which is a new material editor kind of based on Material X. And we kind of have a goal to align and kind of share a component between Max and Maya. So again, cannot say date, cannot say release number, but that's something that will hit beta at some point. Again, this morning I was having discussion with one of my colleagues who was really eager and has a lot of knowledge with UI and stuff like that. So it's in progress. We're working on let's call that Slate 2.0. It's more of a matter of deciding which is the right technology to use under the hood. But once we're settled, we're just gonna start and run for it. And again, I cannot say release number and dates, but
I mean, I just get personally when I open it up and I've got tons of materials, I want to be able to color code them. I want to put the environment shaders in green, and just so I can look at it and not go, I have no idea where to find these materials.
It can turn into like a big spaghetti quite easily. So
yes, I started using the tabs, so you can have different tabs at the top, and but it doesn't work. It crashes.
But it's good.
Sorry, that sounded like a bitch.
Well, it shouldn't.
It's such. I mean, it's so much better than the old-fashioned material editor, which people in my team still use, much to my disgust.
Yeah, some people in my team do. I'm like, come on, guys. I mean, I've only been.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was just a few small tweaks. It would be incredible to use.
Yeah, we were actually Bruno and I.
Sorry, Bruno. I feel like you're the man with the 3D Max T-shirt on, and you're catching a lot of flack here.
There's no flack.
It's through love. It's through love.
Yeah, we were actually in a meeting with one of our users, Bruno and I, and he was showing some of his super complicated shader setups with like deep layers, and he was still using the old one, more material editor, and he was muttering a bit and saying, I really wish there was a way to take like one node and duplicate that, but keep all the inputs. And I opened up Slate, you mean like this shift drag? And he was like, yeah. Yeah, that was like for him, like maybe I should look at this, because if you do it in the old one and you say like copy but not as not do an instance but copy, you get the entire tree gets copied, and he just wanted, so it referenced all the other upstream nodes and just this one, and literally shift drag a node in Slate and you get that. That was funny.
Cutting edge tip, probably worth learning.
While we're asking for things. The one thing, I mean, you kind of saw in my presentation, we have pretty complex geometry that we try to flatten out to a grid, a pretty square grid on our trim sheets. And I think this might be useful for a lot of game artists who are doing trim, is just being able to FFD in the UV editor. And maybe there's a way to do that I don't know how. But to have an FFD mesh or nodes that you can drag things so that you can I mean, hopefully everybody understands what I'm talking about. I don't have to like dig a hole by going too deep into it. But that would make life a lot easier when you're doing trim tiling materials that you want to wrap very specific ways on complex shapes.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. I'm not really the UV editor guy, and I don't exactly know who is, but I literally never touched that code in my life. But I mean, it's a good idea if you're going to start doing manual UV squiggling around. But I'm just wondering, are you using any of the automatic UV flattening stuff at any point?
Yeah, I use a quick peel quite a bit, and planar map and stuff. But that's for us. It's only since we don't bake, we have to do manual UVs for our stuff, right? For these tiling materials. So that's a good starting point. But then usually it's just then we have to, align things and sort of drag vertices to get them just so. And doing it with FFDs would make our life a lot easier because it keeps the proportions intact as you scale the lattice around. So
the relax thing is quite good, isn't it?
Yeah, it can help, but it's
it's not the same. It's true.
Yeah, it's not quite the same because you have very specific, the saucer or the hull bends in very specific ways, and you want it to feel like a perfect, you want the panels to feel like they're following that form. And so being able to FFD vertices in the UV editor would be a perfect way to do that. So I'm going to throw that into the ether. It's something that would certainly, I think, make some game artists' life a lot easier, especially since you've got newer games like Star Citizen. They're doing a lot of work with this trim workflow as well. I mean, I say Star Citizen is new only because they're not out yet, but they've been in development for, I don't know, 5 years. They just haven't released. But
I know a guy, so I can talk. Maybe he's watching. I don't know.
Okay.
But I know that if you're on beta, I know that we're working on a new unfold and packing algorithm for the UV. So that's gonna be released at some point, maybe.
Okay.
Another idea, I just launched Max. So if you go on the help menu, there's a feedback and there's ideas for 3ds Max. Any of those fun ideas, you can actually submit them directly from the product. And there's kind of a voting system. Part of the public forums.
Yeah, I think I submitted this to there a while back, and I had everybody on my team like go and vote on it, because it's something that would all be helpful to us. But it's been there, it's been kind of stuck there for a while. So I mean, if it doesn't rise to the top, I understand, and you obviously have a lot going on.
But you can ask the whole audience to vote now. But I'm gonna ask that person, Logan.
Okay.
Yes.
Awesome. That would be really cool. I think Maya might do something like this. I think there's some sort of lattice edit in UV in Maya. I've heard. I don't use Maya, so I don't know. But so if that makes anything easier, but yeah, that would be really helpful for a lot of people working with trims.
I'm taking notes, man.
Thank you.
I was going to say, write this down, Bruno.
I just did. It's fine. Any other suggestion, feature request, bug report?
Let's all be done on Tuesday. No.
Shall we ask the audience, for those watching, drop a message in the chat for Bruno now?
Ooh, okay.
And Zap, I should say. Or anyone.
Just Bruno. Just Bruno.
Well, there was one about cutifying the whole thing, right? I saw that a bit earlier in the chat. So it's an ongoing process. So Qt is kind of the new UI, more modern for Macs, and it's in progress. I think in the last release, we revamped I think it's the render setup dialog, which actually fixed the infamous double click issue that people were having. Again, it's ongoing. It's kind of one rollout after the other one, or one window after the other one. So you're surprisingly, there's a lot of dialogue and windows in Macs, so we need to go through all of them. So it's kind of an ongoing process to Qtify Macs.
Yeah, one of the problem is that unfortunately many of the older Mac stuff was written in an era where you didn't keep clean your UI logic through your the thing that does the actual work. So it's all kind of entangled. So it's not a trivial task to just change something. You have to literally say, okay, what's this thing trying to do? And basically convert that over to Qt and copy all the behaviors. And it's not easy at all. It's definitely not something that can be automated as much as we would love that. But yeah, we're trying, and we're actually looking at maybe some other way to solve this problem. And I will be exactly that vague and not say any more than that.
I'm going to touch base, Zap, with you on that to try and twist your arm, because that is, as a supporting plugin developer, we are shifting everything over to Qt, but we don't have nearly as much to shift over. But it is, we are in the process of trying to get it done by the end of the year, because Attila says so.
Okay.
at Autodesk. It's something that we have to do as well, but with everyone shifting to 4K monitors, and
yes, I mean the scaling problem with the old stuff is of course the biggest issue, that it doesn't scale properly. So yeah, for sure.
Cool. Any questions? Oh, we've got some.
There's a question for Mads.
Mads, okay. See if I can channel him.
So Eloy is actually asking how much overhead means to have both Slate plus the classic material editor. Do you have a clue, Zap?
It'd be nice to Eloy, by the way, just a reminder.
Does he mean at literally the same time open? Or
No, combine them together, get rid of one over the other?
Yeah, so that's the thing. I mean, because the reason I hear people using the old material editor is actually often for like very simple reason, like screen real estate, which I can sort of get myself. The old one is smaller, wastes less of screen space, and I actually had some ideas of actually making Slate in such a way that the actual Slate portion where you do the trees is actually kind of a fly out that flies out only when you need it, and then so just the property editor section of it is separate, so you can, which is basically what the old material editor is just the property editor, some sample slots up top. So if you could either tear off that without having the rest open, or having it so the rest basically flies out when you move over some little arrow that pops out the rest, and you can do your trees, and when you move out of that it collapses down again. So we have ideas, but since all this is in the process of shifting, what, as Bruno was saying, Slate 2.0 kind of thing, maybe it does something like that. Who knows? We'll see someday.
Yeah, I think to have multiple materials and stuff where it's not every tree is visible would be quite cool. Yeah, you're right. They could just pop in and out. That would be quite good.
Here's a question: asset management. So the Autodesk or the 3ds Max, is it the asset manager? I was looking at it there. Is there plans to have that updated at some stage, or instead of going to a third-party asset manager, is Autodesk going to take care of that, or should the community be looking to spend their money elsewhere?
That's a tough one.
No, I looked at it and I thought, look, that looks great. But then I looked at it hasn't been developed for 2 years or so.
So which one do you mean? You mean the asset
manager? It hasn't been developed for about 15 years to me. It feels like really old-fashioned. If you look at something like Design Connected, I can't remember. I don't use any of their assets, but we do use the Design Connected library software.
Yeah.
It has a fantastic way of finding missing assets. So you click a button and you wait 20 seconds and it finds everything. It's fantastic. I mean, the asset thing in Max is a little bit not that good. There's like lots of bits in Max now which are just not that good, which is fine. It doesn't matter. I still love the software, partly because I've spent 15 years using it, and the idea of transitioning to something else is an absolute nightmare. So there are all kinds of pitches everywhere that need smoothing off and fixing. So it would be interesting to know, Bruno. I mean, I know you have the community thing where people vote for what gets fixed next, but I mean, how do you balance introducing new features versus fixing stuff that should have been fixed years ago? Because I know 3D Max has, do you want to be blunt, but it's had quite a hard history where there's lots of different product managers have been trying to steer it, but they don't get a good enough run of it. There's always something happens and they go. So I mean, what does the current team think? I mean, what's their thinking? Is it introducing new features, or is it kind of fixing stuff that should have been fixed a while ago.
The problem, to an extent, if I may pretend to be Bruno for a second, which I can't because he's Bruno, is whatever we do, it's like a no-win situation in the sense that whatever we do, there's a bunch of people that complain. Did you only fix bugs? Where's my features? And make features like, did you just make features? Where's this thing that's been since 1970? And by the way, can I throw in, if you find a bug, please report it. Do not assume we know about it, because the classic thing that happened to me, I go to a conference and somebody happens to mention that one bug that everybody knows about. I'm like, what bug? Yeah, the thing where you click that and everything crashes. Like, everybody knows that. Yeah, except we don't know it. Have you ever told us? I wrote an email in 1972 and you haven't fixed it. your child that doesn't help, To me, I almost say, like, if a bug isn't fixed and you reported it a year ago, report it again. We have people whose job it is to hit duplicate if the same bug gets reported twice. But because sometimes we can't reproduce or we misunderstand the bug report, or there's not enough information and we put it in like can't repro, we don't know what's going on here,
Yeah.
And maybe more information is the better. Please report bugs. And
I guess it's a bit like I mentioned it earlier with Thomas. He was talking about the Star Wars franchise and how it's 55 years old now. Max isn't 55 years old, but it's what are we now? Come on, someone jump in and tell me how old it is.
30 years old.
30 years.
30, yeah.
It's 30 actually.
That's
we should do something about
program. It's for me, it's incredible that it's still going and innovate. I think it does innovate.
To be technical, 3D Studio is 30 years, but 3D Studio Max is less because there was first the DOS version, and we're going to be all picky. Yeah. So, but if you do, also when something crashes, you have an opportunity to write something. Try between the, the blue words and foul language, maybe actually write something about what happens. There's actually humans that read that his name is Rick.
Yeah, exactly. It's surprisingly helpful if you add some information. As soon as we can reproduce a bug, we can fix it. But when it's just
like usually the way, though, isn't it?
But when people are cursing, it's more difficult to.
As an online game developer, I'm relating to you guys so hard right now.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I feel
so
you.
Back to the original question about the 3ds Max asset library. This is not being developed at the moment. So my advice would be maybe not invest time in this tool, to be very honest with you guys. I know that the connector app is kind of widely used, especially in the ArchViz industry. One of our problem is Max being used in film and TV, in games, in ArchViz, DesignViz, and advertising, just name it. It's, as Zap said, it's very difficult to please everyone. Every release, there's people that say that's the best release ever, and people say that, well, this is crap. So it's kind of difficult. Again, we have feelings, we have friends, family, so it's sometimes challenging. But still, my role is I'm responsible for rendering. I have counterparts responsible for modeling and animation and other stuff in Max. And it's like every second week I take like my best buddy to the park, and we have 2 hours, and I need to please everyone. And we can go every second week, but it's just 2 hours, and I need to please everyone. It's challenging, so
you can't
might want to do the same ride again, or they want to try a new ride. So it's kind of, that's my role every day, but it's still fun and I like it, and I get to work.
Well, I think although maybe I whinged, maybe it's just back then, maybe it's just an opportunity because you were there. But overall, I think I never forget the fact that I owe my mortgage to 3D Max, so I can never get too upset.
Same here.
Program. It means a lot to me. It really does, and it's there are lots of people that don't have jobs as fun as us as users, definitely. So I like it, but everyone deserves a little bit of a whinge every now and then. I think.
I was Harold would say 18 or 19 when I first started down the 18 down the Autodesk route, and look at me now.
I know. I was going to say, oh my God, that was a long time ago.
You're still here.
It's back in DOS days. That was fun.
Yeah. But still, as Ciro was mentioning at the beginning of his presentation, so please use the proper channel to communicate with us. I'm not looking at people whining and cursing on YouTube chat. If you have something, you can reach out to me and all my peers also on the Max team. I mean, with Ciro, he's part of our Slack channel with external users. He's on the Arnold answers. He's on the public. He's everywhere. And sometimes we had session with a designer and him just bouncing and brainstorming ideas. That's actually helpful. And I love Max as much as you guys, and I just want to make it better because my career was also built on top of Max, and that's why I'm here today. So it's kind of a, help me help you situation.
Bruno, what was your career before joining Autodesk?
I work as a design viz specialist, mostly in the product design, architecture a bit. I work in the bicycle industry for a while, where I developed kind of a problem with bicycle. I have 11 or something. And yeah, so I have a background in industrial design, and okay. I was tired of doing like calculating like demolding angle and boring stuff. So I was kind of dragged into doing beautiful images of product that doesn't exist yet, which what happened to me.
It's definitely more fun, yes.
Yes, it is.
Cool. How are we doing for time?
Well, yeah, we are 5 minutes past the time, but we're doing great. Unless we have any more questions from the audience or in the forum, we should probably wrap it up. But I want to say thank you to everyone again. It was a great evening, very nice and really informative. I personally learned a lot, and I guess everyone who was watching. It was nice meeting you all. I just checked. Yeah.
I guess that the question for the audience is, who's going to go out now and try the OSL shaders tomorrow?
Who won't be doing it?
There we go. Yeah, well, so I think it's been a great success on that front. It's good. Were you checking questions?
Yeah, I was about to check, but I think they'll keep on coming to you guys. But for now, we don't have any other questions. So yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Thanks for coming out. That'll be probably a wrap up. And thanks again for joining. Nice to meet you all. And yeah, until next time.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.